And a good evening, and welcome to the first official edition of Night Talk, a show where a group of ordinary people discuss a variety of topics and seek your input through our live chat, which we will share from time to time throughout the evening. And tonight, our co host Eddie is on the road and is in Niagara Falls. Eddie, what's up?
Hey, hi Gary, how you doing? Well, to tell you the truth, I'm enjoying retirement, going on the roll a little. We were in Toronto yesterday and decided to come down here to Niagara Falls to really take in the scenery. It's always a great trip to go visit Niagara Falls. Visited some friends, and I'm presently in Niagara on the Lake. And I tell you what, Gary, was quite the evening yesterday, watching television with friends. As you know, there was a lot of good television going on last night in the United States.
Yeah, must see TV for sure. Quite entertaining in some respects and scary in others.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had a wonderful day in Toronto yesterday. Did a little bit of exploring, but believe it or not, our entire schedule for the evening was based around 9 o'clock last night.
I think everybody's schedule was overall. Now, first of all, I just want to point out a couple of things to any viewers looking in right now. Last week we did a shakedown cruise show, which was really rough technically overall. We did learn some lessons. We're putting those into play tonight, but also tonight is the first show where we have remote guests, and that kind of led to a little bit of a bump at the beginning. Normally, we do have a countdown to the beginning of the program, so I apologize for that sort of being abruptly interrupted. And the two mugs in front of you, shuffling around trying to get everything set up. So anyway, let's get down to business. The first order of the day is today marks the 23rd anniversary of the worst terrorist attack on U.S. soil, leading to the destruction of the Twin Towers in New York, severe damage to the Pentagon, and over 2,000 lives lost. Also, today there is a lot of talk and analysis in the wake of last night's U.S. presidential debate between Republican former President Donald Trump and Democratic candidate U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris. So let's dive in. My initial reaction was Trump came across as a rambling old man like a punch drunk boxer on the ropes without enough sense to quit. Harris started out nervous, but quickly regained her composure, and I think she really did come out on top. Eddie, your thoughts?
Well, you know what, Gary, I think I discussed this very briefly with you, and I spoke with Manal about this, and I did actually speak to a fellow here by the name of DJ I met here. Um, I was trying to go into this debate yesterday as open-minded as I could. I mean, how can you not try to at least go in there and listen to what both candidates had to say? So I went in with an open mind and basically said to myself, here are two supposedly extremely intelligent people vying for the leadership of the free world. And I'm going to have an idea of what I'd like to hear, and I put myself into the position of an American voter and asked myself, what is it that would be important to me in the United States that would make me vote for one or the other? Now I also put myself in the same position, saying, if this was an election in Canada, would I have the same questions for our leaders as the Americans should have for the Americans? And the answer to that genuinely is yes in most of the cases. So I went in this with an extremely open mind. So I wanted to know who can sell me on getting my vote. That is no different than in the business environment or someone buying a car, for example. So you go to dealer A and dealer B. You're going to listen to price, you're going to listen to the value of the vehicle, you're going to listen to its capabilities and what you're going to make my life easier after I purchase the vehicle. You listen to candidate A, you listen to candidate B. You certainly don't want to hear candidate A bashing candidate B and saying his car is full of crap, even though it's the same kind of car. So I went into this very open and listened to this. Now, you asked me what I thought about the debate. I have a Guinness here in front of me. I'd like to take a sip of it, but I won't. I was just completely flabbergasted at some of the things that came out from Mr. Trump.
And we
Um,
do have some clips of that to play a little bit later.
oh, wonderful. I was just totally flabbergasted along with the people around me. I was actually sitting with a Republican, a fellow who usually votes Republican. And that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to vote for Trump, but he wanted to get to see what he represented in terms of what he sees as Republican values. And he was just totally gobsmacked with what came out. But for him, more importantly, is what did not come out. Didn't give him a warm and fuzzy feeling. Didn't feel like there was a plan for everything, anything. He felt that the appropriate questions were asked of Donald Trump. He just never answered them. Where Kamala Harris did answer a lot of the questions. She seems to have a vision. She seems to have a plan. So I won't say so much on how I felt about it. I told you the first 5, 10 minutes, I just could not believe what was coming out of the man's mouth. It was more the reaction of my friends who typically vote Republican. They were just gobsmacked completely in terms of what he didn't say, which is extremely important, but also what he did ended up saying and the far-fetched lies and whatnot. Millions of people dying in the Ukraine-Russian war, when the fact is we're not in the millions even close to it yet. But as bad as war is, it's just verbal diarrhea that was coming out of his mouth yesterday. So it was very entertaining. I'll tell you that.
Nobody expects to get solid policy details in the environment of a debate. It's more
Right.
about, hitting in broad punches overall. But when you listen to Harris, she did refer to some aspects of her plans, her policies, but we didn't get the heavy details, that we're going
Correct.
to need, or that U.S. Voters are going to need over the next 55 days before they go in and start marking their ballot. What I did find interesting was how swift, pardon the pun here, but how swift one very high-profile celebrity's reaction was on Instagram. And of course, I'm talking about Taylor
Oh,
Swift
yes.
and
Yep.
the post she put out last night after the debate. And I'll just leave it up there for a minute, but I loved how she signed it off with as the crazy cat lady, which is a shot at Trump's VP choice, who referred to crazy cat ladies one day in response to a question that he was asked along the way. So, um, you know, this is going to be, especially somebody like Taylor Swift coming out with a statement like this. I think it's going to play into the younger voters, the millennials getting out there
Right.
and actually becoming much more involved in this election than perhaps any of their age group has been in previous elections.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And you know what? That's one thing that I think continuously frustrated Donald Trump during his first term, prior to his first term, and now in terms of his um, uh, campaigning, is he's having an extremely hard time finding any sort of celebrity pat on the back and saying, "Hey, I've got your back, Mr. Trump," and he just does not seem to be getting it. I mean, just take a look at all his campaigning and the entry songs, right? I mean, every time he plays a song, an artist will come out and essentially say, "Cease and desist. I don't want you playing my music for anything in terms of Trump's campaign and his electoral platform." So that's pretty tough. And when you're looking at someone who has the influence of Taylor Swift worldwide. Especially in the United States of America, that has to be a tremendous blow. And I was watching the Tonight Show as well yesterday, and Jane Fonda was a guest. And you know what? I mean, she is not afraid to put on the boxing gloves and spar with anyone. And she didn't hold back any punches, and she basically said, I am throwing my complete and utter support behind Kamala Harris, and went out and explaining what exactly it was that she liked about her. I mean, she's not just going to throw her vote one way or the other. And I think that's what is eluding Donald Trump is the star power to back him up, which have a direct line influence to the voters of the American population. He just doesn't seem to be getting that support. Not that I've seen, at least.
No, definitely not getting that kind of support whatsoever. And, coming back to Taylor Swift with the Swifties that are out there in the U.S., I mean, that could be a deciding factor, help to be a deciding factor in some of the swing states. And going into this debate, the Harris and Trump were virtually tied in
Right.
so coming out of it, I mean, yes, you always get a bump
Hey,
after a debate, but whether it uh, continues on, whether you can build on that remains to be seen. However, there's no question. Doesn't matter who you're talking to, really, unless you're a diehard Republican wrapped around Trump's waist kind of thing. Um,
right.
you know, Harris came out on top last night. She took it to Trump. She actually, as she really got over that little bit of nervousness at the beginning of it,
Right.
she
Correct.
started to, give him little digs. And what I found really interesting was watching his facial expressions all the way through.
And his body language.
Yeah, yeah. It was really quite a study in a whole lot of ways. The other thing is, I watched a bit of an interview this morning on CBC, and they were talking to a person who looks at speeches and listens to delivery of speeches and so on, and how things are coded. And she was saying that Trump really tried playing to his base last night with various code words. And of course, one of his major things was he just kept coming around, no matter, it seemed, for 4 or 5 different questions in particular. He just brought it around totally unrelated to the whole thing around immigration and
Right.
how that's playing havoc with the U.S. And we do have a couple of clips from that we'll play here in a few minutes. I think the first one I'd like to play is
in Springfield. They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there had been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've seen
this.
people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say
clear.
my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
But
television.
the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying
manager.
that dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney?
Well, what do you say to that? I saw him say that, and then I think about the people that have put him up there on the pedestal to run the ticket. Sorry about the screen. I'm holding with my hand. To run the ticket. Good God, Republican members, could you not find someone more credible that can actually even have a conversation that speaks to policy, which is exactly what most of the viewers are looking for when they go into debate? You're not going to go down to the nuts and bolts, as you mentioned earlier on, in terms of what Kamala was speaking about in terms of the policies. There's just not enough time for that. However, she took the opportunity to lay a high level idea out on the table so that people can understand it. Now, here are the Republicans that put this guy in charge or listen to him for everything he asks for God knows what reason. At least speak some policy. The Republican Party, your traditional Republican Party, have always had policy. Okay? As far back as I can remember, there was always a policy to table, there was always a policy to speak up during the debates. Not once did this man, who wants to be the leader of the free world again, have anything intelligent to say about policy. I'm sorry to say that, but Republicans, you could have found a much better candidate, and I don't know why you put this guy on the pedestal. You can do better. Okay. You know what? In terms of Mr. Biden, President Biden, when both of them were debating, the first thing that came to my mind, I said, Mr. Democrat Party, Mr. Republican Party, guys, you can do better than this. Okay. And I think that the Democratic Party showed that they found, hey, we can do better than this, but not necessarily pushing Biden out. But he realized that he's got to take the lower road on this one for the benefit of the United States of America. And he said that frequently, and most people concur with that. Um, but here you have a 70, what is he, 78 years old, in the Republican Party. He's the oldest candidate to run for election, to run for presidency. Guys in the Republican Party, you could have done a lot better. You could have had a lot better representation of what you want to do for the American people. Donald Trump, unfortunately, did not convey any message in terms of what he's going to do to better the country. And I think that's what a lot of people were looking for. And my Republican colleagues that were with me, they were looking for that too. What is Donald Trump going to do to make Americans and my life better? And they told me at the end of the day that, as a matter of fact, they were very frustrated and left. That was a good night for them. I watched the whole thing. They were very frustrated with that, and they were looking for something of substance, and they didn't get it.
And you mentioning the fact that they left, Harris brought up the fact that a lot of the crowds that Trump has been drawing get very tired very quickly of the same old tune, and they get up and
Right.
they leave. And he did not take kindly to that comment
Not at
whatsoever.
all. Not at all. What did he say to defend himself? Something to the effect of her people were leaving, and some I can't remember
Oh,
exactly what.
she was bussing people in and paying them to attend.
Yeah, yeah. That's why she had huge crowds there. They're bussing
Yeah.
them in, right?
Yeah. Meantime, he has the greatest sized crowds of anyone in history.
Yeah. You know what, Gary? Call me strange, but I got a big heart by nature, right? I actually feel sorry for the man. Um, why do I feel sorry for him?
Yeah. Why?
You know
That's
what?
a good question.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll tell you why. I mean, I don't think he's 100% there. I don't think he's 100% well up where it counts. Um, and normally people that I notice struggle with any sort of capacities, mental capacities, if you want to call it. You got to have a heart for these people. I mean, if I see someone struggling on the street or might have somebody who's got tremendous level of OCD and suffers from that. I mean, these are all mental ailments. You feel for them. So, in a very odd way, as much as I don't appreciate the person and human being he is, at the same time, in terms of whatever he's ailing from, you got to feel a bit sorry for him. I mean, I don't like him. And uh, n- not that I hated him in the past, but every passing moment when he does open his, when he does open himself to conversation, intelligent conversation, just nothing intelligible comes out, and it's just constant finger pointing, constant "woe is me." That's not how a leader should be conveying himself to the general population if he wants to win election. I mean, that's just my take. And you know what, Gary? You and I are we're keeping a very close eye on what's happening in Canada with the departure of the NDP, with the agreement with the Liberals and moving away from them. We might be looking at a general election within the next 2 months in Canada. And even if not, with the existing leadership that's there, I'm going to be looking at every one of those leaders in the exact same way. What are you guys going to do to better the country? What are you guys going to do to better the lives of the people in Canada? And you know what? If one of our leaders just happens to be out in left field when it comes to mental capacity, I will equally feel sorry for that fellow and equally say, Liberal Party or NDP Party or the Progressive Conservatives, can't you find anyone better? What are you guys doing? But at the end of the day, to summarize, not to be too long-winded about this, Donald Trump had every opportunity to present whatever platform his party wants him to present, and he did not do that at all. It was all about me, me, me. He didn't speak about what his party was going to do to make the world better. I'm going to stop the war in the Ukraine. I'm going to do this in Israel. How? You're going to pick up a phone call and say, "Hey, how you doing?" It doesn't work that way. The world does not work that way. So yes, I'm disappointed. In one way, I'm really disappointed. I really was hoping that he would, pull up his pants and really give Kamala an intelligent fight. He failed miserably. There was no intelligent fight in him whatsoever.
That's because he has too big of an ego. And that's what's driving some of these rants because he just wants to just blow his own horn about how great I am. I have the greatest this, I have the greatest that. We have, had the greatest economy while I was in power. The whole thing was just me, 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 me. I'm so great. I'm so good. And you know what? Unlike you, I don't feel sorry for the guy whatsoever. He got himself into this. He's out there, and obviously he's either too far gone, too thick skinned, or whatever, but he's not getting that most people are laughing at him and think that he's, nothing short of, for lack of a better term, some kind of a buffoon.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know what? We want to be polite. I mean, in terms of our conversations, I mean, you and I having a coffee and having a conversation is one thing, right? And we're trying to express ourselves, to our friends that are viewing us right now. Um, yeah, you know what? I mean, he's done this to himself. Absolutely. Um, Lost opportunity is a lost opportunity. You're never going to get back. Um, I think, like I said, he could have given Kamala a run for her money. He just doesn't have the know-how and how to do it because, as you were saying, his ego is getting in the way of his better judgment every single time. And you mentioned at the beginning of our podcast here, every question that was posed to them, Kamala either answered it well or she provided a sense of an answer. Every time they asked Donald Trump a question, I think I stopped counting at about 10. After the first 10 questions, he only answered one. Out of the 10 questions, six of the questions he answered was, "Oh, well, you know what? You're letting millions of killers and murderers across the borders and you're killing us. You're murdering us. This country's going to hell." Well, it had absolutely zero to do with the question. I did this with the economy and I did that with the economy. Why didn't you say exactly what you did do? You know, talk about the employment, talk about the employment numbers. He can't talk about the economy. Well, he can't. I saw this broadcast where he was in one of his campaigns. He had a big chart and he was actually presenting how the economy was growing from this year to this year, and then it died down. Okay, and he was saying this was me who did this during this time. I raised the economy. And then we actually look at the years of the bar of the chart graph where it goes up and the economy stays up. It's when Biden got elected. So right there in front of all his constituents, he shot himself in the foot with another lie. Either they got the
Last
wrong
night,
graph up.
yeah, last night he turned that around a bit in saying that it was his 4 years in office that built the economy, the foundation of the economy, and that Biden and the Democrats were riding on the coattails and taking credit for it.
Yes, yes. And you know what? He mentioned the stock markets were at an all-time high and all-time record. You know how I took that? How many Americans really are interested that the stock market is doing great? The stock market in general are run by the banks who have their agents who speak to the common person and invest their money if they can invest money, if they have money to invest. So when the stock market is doing great, that may not necessarily have any bearing, what do you call it, trickle down economy, trickle down effects to 60 to 70% of the general population. So, you know what? Good for you that the stock market is doing great. But what about 70% of the people who can't even put a dollar into the stock market? What good is that going to do? You know, it's like I wish there was something more substantial that he had to present to the common American. Look, you got the Republican Party. We've talked about this often. We got the Democrat Party, and in my opinion, we have the Trumplican Party. Okay, and I think what we saw yesterday was an absolute presentation to his base, the Republican Party of the United States, to appease them. You know what? No matter what he said yesterday, that group of people are going to vote for him come hell or high water. What he
Absolutely.
lost was the opportunity of undecided Republicans, like my colleagues yesterday, typically vote Republican, not this time, not last time. Okay, but you're willing to hear him out, to hear what he had to say, and you know what? He made their decision for them yesterday. Opportunity lost, and how many millions of voters across the country are just like that, right?
And that's just it. Especially, I mean, they were in a battleground state as it was for the debate last night. So, how do you think that played?
Yeah, exactly. Um, well, look, I mean, how do I think that played? Exactly. It's a battleground state. Everyone was watching, I'm sure, in that state. A lot of good people in all the United States, all the states in America they're wonderful states. I've traveled extensively. Wonderful human beings in all these states, and they all want the same thing: roof over my head, feed my family, watch my children grow, watch my family grow. They all want the same thing, and they're looking for somebody to take them to that elusive promised land. Um, and the great state of Pennsylvania, the folks there are looking for exactly the same thing. I really think that in Pennsylvania, he, aside from the Republican group, I think he lost some Republican votes there. And you know what the margins are very thin. He can't afford to lose a damn thing.
No.
And yesterday after the debate, what was that room that all the reporters went to? The slip
Well,
room?
the spin room,
It was called what? Oh, the spin room. I'm
the
sorry.
spin room, yeah.
So it's very interesting in watching all the broadcast groups there, in the spin room and having discussions. And all of a sudden, I'm just hearing all this noise. And I was flipping between Fox and I was flipping between MSNBC because I like to get a different perspective on both sides to see what's happening. Um, when I started hearing the horse poop from the Fox group, I turned the station. I couldn't listen to them anymore. But as I went to MSNBC, then you see this whole gaggle of reporters swarming and battling and jostling each other because Mr. Trump showed up on the floor. And I think a lot of people on the floor were actually shocked that he showed up on the floor. I flipped back to Fox. They even said they were surprised he came out there. So you kind of wonder, well, why did you come out there in the first place? Rub shoulders. I mean, these are reporters. Um, he's claiming victory and whatnot, but a lot of the analysts were actually saying, I can't who said it on Fox News this morning as well. He lost. He lost the debate, and coming from somebody from the Fox group is just mind-boggling. I mean, you don't do that. You don't kill your own quarterback. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
it's unprecedented that you had the candidate come out into the spin room following the debate. That very, very, very rarely happens at all.
right, right.
And there he was, and as you say, coming out and with a lot of bluster. And so he came out, either he came out on his own, and once again, didn't follow what his campaign advisors were telling him, or they told him, you better get out there and start some major damage control, which again, sending Trump out to try and do damage control, good luck with that.
Exactly, Gary. Like, I mean, when he went out there, okay, what can he possibly say that's going to be substantial that has to be communicated to the general population through a third party being the media? Man, Bud, too late already. You're not going to recover anything, right? So I was still listening to what he had to say. The same constant thing. He did this, they did that, I did this. Nothing changed. So I circle back.
I,
The
I just want to play
Yeah,
another clip here, and what's going to happen is apparently we lost audio when I flipped over to that
okay.
scene the first time around. So
Yeah.
I'll just flip over and fire up the clip, and then we can come back. I'm not sure what's going on with the audio because it seemed to be working this afternoon on 2 or 3 different tests, but it's live, so stuff happens, right? So let's
Hey, we're allowed.
yeah.
How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
Yeah.
So if you noticed on 3 or 4, maybe 5 different occasions when he was asked a question, he just kept bringing it around, playing to the base, the hard base of support that he has. And, some of them have openly admitted that even they know he lies, but that's okay because it's him. Anyway,
Right.
there was one other clip that came out of that as well, related to the migrants. Let's have a look here.
On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon.
So it just kept coming around and coming around to that same argument that he was making all the way through, which was totally unrelated to a lot of the questions that was being asked at the time. There's one more that I'd like to play, and that's related to this TV days. I guess you're fired.
His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term.
See, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they? But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Back to the brag.
Back to the brag. Yeah, and you kind of wonder where he comes up with these numbers. And you know what? It's pretty hard at some point just to challenge him in everything he says, because you're never going to get anywhere in a debate. And you know what? I should have done that before our broadcast today, but if you look up the definition of the word debate in the Webster Dictionary, it's essentially two parties presenting a platform, a position, debating why it's the correct one. That's what I believe, and we can check out what exact definition is. But a debate is a debate about a topic of discussion, and yes, the debate might have gone off on 12 to 14 different topics and questions, but you have to be able to debate each one verbatim, not, ignore what the question was and go back to the previous question because you weren't finished finger pointing. And like I said, I mean, he's always saying he's a master of the deal, but, certainly in terms of master of debate and speaking eloquently, I'm glad that he was able to put more than 5 words together in a sentence, which is something unheard of in terms of his campaigns and his rallies. It just did not give me the sense of confidence that this individual is fit to lead a country, let alone lead a country, that he's running businesses. And he's saying he's firing people. Well, you and I have both been in the corporate world, Gary, okay? And I think a lot of our viewers would agree with us. If I had a director or a manager that constantly had to fire the managers that he hired in the first place, I would question his hiring capability. Who are you hiring? Why are you hiring them? Why you have to fire them? Obviously, you're not vetting these people properly from the get-go. I mean, look, the mandate is only 4 years old. The mandates are only 4 years long. You better put the right people in place month one, not have to fire them and replace them every year.
Well, his White House was a revolving door. Not only it started from the
Yes.
communications people right on through. It was a revolving door and chaos day in and day out. How do you do anything substantial in that kind of an environment? You don't. What kind of a leader is he? He's not. And the sooner that some of his hardcore supporters really start to peel away the layers here and have a long, hard look at him and a come to Jesus meeting with themselves, they have to just say, you know what? What was I drinking?
Right. Well, let me ask you. I know what my answer is, but was there any question that was put to both Harris and Trump that you believe should have been answered by either Kamala or Mr. Trump? I know what mine is for Mr. Trump, and I'm really saddened by the fact and frustrated by the fact that the mediators did not get him to answer it. Anything come to
I
mind?
think there were a number of opportunities where the hosts could have gone in and really challenged the two of them on different things. The fact of the matter is, going into these things, you have to be prepared for the fact that you're going to get a revolving door of talking points, and that no matter what the question is, if you've prepared properly and you've been prepared properly, you're going to take the question, maybe repeat a part of it, and bridge right into the talking point that you want to associate with that answer, or a
Okay.
talking point that you want that is important for you to get out, whether it's related to the original question.
Right.
That's part of the game that takes place now. But the fact of the matter is, there were a number of questions. Like, again, we did get some substance from Harris in response to some of the questions overall. She was very, very firm on her position as far as Roe versus Wade, and how she would handle that. She was, but a lot of the others, it was still very broad in a lot of ways
Yeah.
as far as the response is concerned. And hopefully, as the campaign progresses, I know we're not going to get it from the Trump side, but she needs now to take, coming out of this debate last night and riding on that wave, she needs to continue to build on it, but she now really needs to start articulating in more detail the plans or the policies, whatever you want to call them, as
Right.
to, you know, the issues that she's going to tackle. And let's face it, if you're going into this thing, you've got 4 years. It's a 4-year mandate. So, don't run around firing out all kinds of things. Pick 3 or 4 things that you can really focus on, and you know that you're going to be able to deliver either full or at least some kind of a compromise result that is for the betterment of everyone. And that's one thing that she did do last night as far as
Mhm.
how she presented some things. She talked to the people. She looked at the camera and she said, "You." She
Yeah.
connected with a lot of people in that respect. Whereas on the split screen, you're looking at Trump.
Yeah. Stoic pace.
Yeah,
Well, and 2 points, Gary. I mean, earlier we talked about his look, his facial expressions, and his body language. Uh, at the beginning, when she came out and put her hand out and shook his hand, he looked a little uncomfortable and he didn't expect it. Okay, you know what? That shows that she'll battle with the best of them. And just right there, she caught him off guard. So that's a win for her.
yep,
The second thing I noticed, and like you mentioned, that stoic look, he just always like this and, scum face, and he never spoke to the people. He spoke at the camera more than anything else. Third of all, he never, ever acknowledged that Vice President Harris even existed. He never turned to her. He never looked at her. He never spoke to her. Every time she spoke to former President Trump, she always turned to him. She was not afraid to look at him. And then she turned to look at the people, not the camera. Big, big, big difference in terms of body language dynamics. No
right.
question about it.
And even when he was speaking, she would turn and look. And of course, some of the looks that came across her face, especially with the dog and cat
Yeah, it was
buffet and
genuine,
what
like
have you.
genuine shock.
Yeah, there are
What do you
no
say to that?
words.
No, no, not. What do you say to that? Well, and the second point I wanted to make, Gary, about the question I think that the moderator should have pushed him on, because he's constantly bringing up the border, constantly bringing up the flow of criminal elements across the border, and the immigrants are all criminals. He brought it up, like I said, 5 or 6 times. When Kamala brought up what program she and President Biden tried to push through Congress to hire or double the workforce in the border patrol areas, right? Why did you make a phone call to have that blocked. And I can't recall what happened, but the question was never answered. Myself, if that was such a big issue for Donald Trump and the Republican Party, the border, why did you axe the policy that they wanted to invoke to help secure it? There was never an answer, Gary, and I'm really disappointed that A, perhaps Kamala could have asked again, but I think she didn't want to play his game of the debate, his style of debate. And B, I think the moderator should have asked that question, even though, you know what, they may have not been getting a fair shake in terms of were you guys fair one way or the other. Maybe they weren't as fair as they could have been to Donald Trump, but he made it so difficult for them to be fair to him. He never answered the darn questions. You know?
She did respond to that issue
Yes, you did.
in a very straightforward fashion, and I'm trying to remember exactly how she put it. And I just had a brain freeze, so it has left me. The other thing is, I want to come back around to the media in general and their handling of things of late. And you and I had this discussion over coffee the other day, actually, is the fact that during Biden's lead up to the debate and during the debate and shortly after the debate until he withdrew, the mainstream media was all over him about his cognitive ability and
Mm,
whether he should, his age and whether he should actually be running, for reelection.
right.
If you watch over the last couple of weeks and watch like some of the pictures that are coming out of Trump's rallies and his facial, beyond the expressions, but just his face in general, long and drawn and in some pictures and video coming out of some of the rallies, he looked extremely tired or worn down in some
Right.
respect, and he would go off onto these tangents. If we thought last night he was rambling, he some of the other tangents that he's gone off on in some of his rallies, the largest ever according to him, um, are just beyond. I mean, they're very, very concerning. He is now the oldest person in the race.
Correct. Yeah.
That was something that he took to Biden at every opportunity. So where is the mainstream media on this? And they really should be following this a little closer, because what I'm seeing is, to me, very alarming as far as his health is concerned, and
Well,
whether he's going to make it through the next 55 days, really.
well, let me ask you this, Gary. I mean, you being way up there in the broadcasting industry, being a broadcaster and whatnot. Why do you think that the media is not actually asking the question that everybody else seems to be wanting to be asked? Why is the media not focusing on Donald Trump's age and his apparent lack of cognitive capabilities from time to time? Um, from the time that I've known you, this is I can bet you my next retirement paycheck that comes in from the government that you would have asked a damn question if you had the microphone. Why are they
Absolutely.
not asking this question?
It's there are probably a lot of factors at play, Eddie, and that would be you'd get me off on a tangent, for sure. Uh, but I don't think that it's being done with some kind of agenda in mind. I think that the transition to Harris has just been a major focus. And yes, they're watching Trump, but it's Trump. They're used to dealing with Trump, his 4 years in the White House and then ever since. And now in the campaign, it's to a lot of like sometimes you lose your sensitivity, and you when you lose that sensitivity, you kind of lose the sharpness as well. And it's
Right.
just, oh yeah, it's Trump, and you just keep on going because you're under a deadline.
Yeah.
You've got a live hit coming up in 2
Right.
minutes, and what have you. So I don't think, as some might want to suggest, that it's any kind of um, certainly not intentional. I just think it's sort of been lost in the shuffle, and all of the rising star celebrity kind of status that
Hmm.
Harris has mustered over the last 2 months.
Right.
Now, I'm not making
You know,
excuses. I'm
no,
just,
no, you're not. You know what I mean? Again, I'm circling back to a great opportunity for Donald Trump to make some gains in keeping up with Harris and her popularity and this new breath of fresh air that seems to be predominant in discussions in the United States. I mean, even here in Niagara on the Lake, I'm walking by and bars are playing news. I've seen Fox here, I've seen CNN. I hear people discussing the debate just walking down the street, or so obviously it's on everybody's mind. I still circle back to the fact that Donald Trump lost a tremendous opportunity to make some gains with the undecided voters, the independent voters, and he just completely blew it. Look, I'm a hockey fanatic. I love watching ice hockey. I'm an ice hockey sports fan. Okay, I love to watch a good hockey game. I hate seeing a team get a 5-0 lead and then blowing it, losing 6-5. This is what happened to Mr. Trump yesterday. You mentioned in the polls he had a lead, although he was holding on to it somewhat. He blew the hockey game yesterday right out, and I hate seeing that. And for no good reason besides, as you mentioned earlier on, it's just his ego, and he seems to have this psychosis about his ego and having to communicate with people that everybody knows him and everybody likes him. And the unfortunate part is typically when he says that a lot of individuals do agree with him and like him, to the Western world, these people are people you don't want to associate with or jump into bed with. But he seems to always mention them in a very, very lighthearted fashion, in a very amorous fashion, which, from a political perspective, is odd. I'm not going to say it's not right. It's just very strange and very odd listening to speak about some of these people. I mean, I'll bring one up, obviously. Vlad, big good old Vlad Putin. I mean, he talks to him like they're going to go out for a sandwich every Friday night and go out for a beer after that. It is just unbecoming. I mean, yesterday he mentioned something about Kamala being a Marxist. Has he ever read Karl Marx's doctrines? Doesn't even know what Marxism is. Doesn't even know what communism. He doesn't even know what communism is at the same by the same token. Um, a lot of the stuff that he actually says himself, he would have been arrested in the '60s while we were throwing communist sympathizers in jail. Some of the things he's saying are just so far fetched. It just boggles the mind of hardworking citizens like we were. I mean, I know we're retired now, but the common man is just very, very hard to stomach. You know, he he very often does not like the fact that people are calling him neo-fascist. I mean, we've heard that comment quite often, right? I think Kamala mentioned it yesterday about what happened in the Carolinas a few years back.
yes.
Um, has he ever read Mein Kampf? I have. You should look at some of the fine lines in there because it's starting to look very, very similar in terms of what this Miss I won't mention his name, but who the author of Mein Kampf was. People can look that up on the internet. Um, and it's just flabbergasting how uninformed he is about what really is happening in the world, or historically what has happened in the world. And unfortunately, some of the media out there are basically condoning everything he's doing to continuously support that particular base to ensure his electoral victory. Um, and it's hard for me to watch this, and I try to I really try to fact check as much as I can. Do I want to spend my whole day fact checking? No. I fact check Biden. I fact check Kamala. And sometimes they don't give you absolutely 100% truth, but 80% of what they're saying is accurate. Okay. Most of the time when I fact check something that comes out of Mr. Trump, but even worse than that, when I fact check media, I read Associated Press, I read Reuters, I listen to the big three, ABC, NBC, CBS, I listen to CTV, I listen to BBC America, just to get a good perspective of what is actually being looked at and reported on. And more often than not, they're speaking the same language. I cannot believe that they're all meeting in the morning and saying we need to say this and communicate this to people. There's just no way. Then I call them the ABF network. What is that? Anything but Fox. And I do watch Fox News because I want to get that perspective. And it just flabbergasts me what some high level um, reporters or so-called reporters are actually saying. You're talking about the Tucker Carlsons of the world. You're talking about Sean Hannity's of the world. And I'm just completely flabbergasted by what these individuals are saying. Sometimes they do say the truth. Okay, and I check the things that are out in right field. I really check and say, whoa, hold on, guys, what the hell are you doing? So the media has a big responsibility to try to get the correct information out to the people and the truth. And in some areas, they're failing us on both sides of the fence. In some areas, they're both failing us. There's no question about that. But I don't know what to say at the end of the day. It's just opportunity lost by Mr. Trump, and I'll repeat it: opportunity lost, and because of his reluctance to talk about policies and politics in any in-depth level at all, he blew it for everybody that's been donating money to him. He blew it for everybody that believed in him. I mean, there's a lot of people that believe in the guy. You know, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and everybody's entitled to their own views.
And speaking of fundraising, you know, there's an issue that probably at some point down the road we should tackle, Eddie, and that is look at the millions of dollars that the Harris campaign raised as soon as Biden stepped aside. Millions of dollars. And
Right.
I sit here sometimes and scratch my head and think to myself, you look at that fundraising. You
Right.
look at the fundraising for the church in Paris that burned to the ground and the restoration effort that came about and the money that was raised.
Yes.
Why can't we take some issues close to home and raise money like that to deal
Yeah.
with these issues? Why?
You're absolutely right. Yeah. I get it.
I'd love to hear people's opinion on that one. Why?
Yeah. No, and I don't know what it is. I mean, is it because the church was such a big institution that people throw all that kind of money into rebuilding Notre Dame, Cathedral Notre Dame? I don't know.
I,
The money that's being thrown into political campaigns.
yeah,
I mean, you're talking about more than a quarter or a third of $1 billion, 360 some odd $1 million raised in the month of August, was it?
yeah,
Can you imagine what that money could have done to
exactly.
better the lives of people? I mean, this is money that they're throwing into these campaigns. What if Kamala Harris loses? Money lost. All this money could have gone to so much better things. And I'm not sure, Gary, if it's just the way of the world. I mean, at the end of the day, you're looking at different elements of the world and different social models in the world competing with each other constantly. A prevalent element around the entire planet is money, and some people have it, most people don't. And unfortunately, with the individuals that do have it, they they will donate it as long as, well, what are you going to do for me tomorrow attitude.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, and don't take this as a general comment that everybody's like this. There's a lot of beautiful people out there who have a lot of money that do a lot of good for the world and the poverty of the planet and whatnot. I mean, some of you have been criticizing, you know what, you can eliminate poverty in such and such country by donating $6 billion. And immediately the individual would say, you know what, I'll give you $6 billion. Can you guarantee me it's going to get down to the person who needs it? It's a good point. You can't just expect these people to throw money down to the front lines and, for every $10, $9 disappears into everybody's pockets and then $1 makes it down to the end. I don't know. Is it a human nature thing? Is it just the way we are? Is it just the way people are? It's really hard to say, Gary, but I do agree with you. It's very hard to stomach when you see that kind of money being pumped into rebuilding the cathedral in Paris. It's a piece of work. It's historical heritage. I get that, but that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, and it was raised just like that. The same as the money that the Harris campaign raised, just like
Just
that.
like that.
Yeah,
Right.
they have more money than they're going to be able to spend even on ads.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, look, I mean, I found you know what's interesting too, though? I watched the debate between Trump and Biden. Um, that was painful for me
It
to
was.
watch on
It
both
really
counts.
was.
Watching Joe Biden struggle. Not that he didn't say he made a lot of good points. He did present a lot of things, but he struggled. I mean, the going joke was it was past his bedtime. Maybe it was. Maybe he's had a very long day and he's an aged person.
He
And
apparently wasn't
and the
feeling well.
buffoonery from the other side. So it was very, very hard for me to watch both from the Trump side and the crap that was coming out of his mouth versus Biden's struggle as an elderly man, a respectful elderly man, a statesman, if you want to call it. Yesterday, on the other hand, um, I didn't find entertaining. I did. I didn't find it hurtful to me to watch. It was very informative to me. Like I said at the beginning of our program here, I went in there expecting something good from Donald Trump. I gave him that chance to prove to me that, you know what, he does belong on that platform with Kamala. He does not. I'm sorry. After the first 10 minutes, I said same old, same old. There is just absolutely no way this guy should be on that stage with her. But he's still on the ticket, and he's going to be still very strong on that ticket, even into election night, I think.
By the end of the evening, she was looking very presidential in her manner, no doubt. Um, it also gave all of us a chance to see her and get to know her a little better outside of the VP role, which you always kind of play in the background to the
Right.
president. So a lot of people may have known of her, but they've never really watched her in action.
Right.
So I think perhaps some eyes were opened with her performance last night, and as to who she is as a person and a potential president of the U.S. There probably are some people saying, well, why would we care in Canada? Why are we even talking about it today? Why are we talking about it tonight?
Hmm.
Well, you know what? Don't lose sight of the fact that we are the mouse sleeping with the elephant next door. So,
No, exactly. I mean, we did struggle with a lot of the tariffs that the Trump administration levied during his mandate. A lot of our farmers struggled. The steel industry struggled. The metal industry. I'm sorry. We all struggled because some of the decisions that I actually took. And at the end of the day, when you look at some of the numbers that I saw in Associated Press about 3 or 4 months ago, um, the um, the Rust Belt in the United States. Your Ohio's, your Pennsylvania's harboring the lake. All of these steel manufacturing plants, they all struggled, and the tariffs that Mr. Trump was levying against countries like China in terms of steel imports were just creating havoc with the metal industry in the United States. So, I don't know if this was something that was planned, or did he anticipate this, or it was just a complete oversight on the Trump's administration's part in terms of what kind of an impact it was going to have on the American worker, regardless if it was tariffs on metal, tariffs on cars, tariffs on technology, tariffs on commodities. Even that had a dire effect on American farmers. But by the same token, equally, they affected our people up here in Canada as well. So you know what? That's why there was a lot of people in Canada closely monitoring that campaign and continue to closely general citizens, but a lot of it, I'm sure the industry experts here in Canada are preparing for the possibility of another Trump mandate. What are we going to do in terms of keeping our businesses afloat if this person ends up being president of the United States again? Big impact. You just don't know because he's completely unpredictable. On Friday, he'll say this. On Monday, he'll try to pass that into law.
Right.
It's the consistency as well, right?
So it's going to be interesting over the next day or two to watch the polls and see just how much of a gain perhaps Harris made over Trump as a result of her debate performance. It's going to be interesting to watch Trump's reactions, if his advisors can get him back on script and just stay to the talking points, and that's it. And where it goes from here, well, we're 55 days away from the big night, so
Right.
it's going to be a very fast moving 55 days because here in Canada we have our own political
That's right.
pot starting to boil overall, and we didn't even get a chance to touch on that tonight, but that'll
Yeah.
be the focus of our show next week because we have the Liberal caucus that's wrapped up. There's some
Right.
unhappy campers within the caucus. Trudeau's still there as leader. He's brought in Mark Carney. We've got the breakup of the Liberals and the NDP. Singh's here in Montreal with his caucus meeting, and also out campaigning in the Verdun area by-election. And we have Polyev today coming out and saying, you know what, I'm going to try and get the first non-confidence motion I can in the fall sitting
Right.
of the House and force an election this fall. And he's inviting Singh to join with him and the bloc if possible. So lots to talk about next week. And
Right.
I don't know where you're going to be next week, but anyway, we'll hook up somehow.
I'll surprise you. We don't have an itinerary.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I talked to my boss, Manel, and she kind of tells me where we're going.
All righty. So thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. Remember to like, subscribe, and click on the bell to receive notifications of when the show is coming up. Until next week, thank you. Night Talk returns in 1 week. Good night.
Good night.